People who were on reality family shows as kids, think Super Nanny, Wife Swap, etc., how much of it was real and how much was fiction, set up for drama? Story 1A girl I went to school with was on My Super Sweet 16. She was always quiet but well-liked, and the kids on that show were usually monsters, so we were curious about how the episode would paint her. There was one scene where she was checking in on a vendor and they said something might not be finished in time for the party and she didn't have a meltdown or anything. But she said something dramatic like, "Oh no, that's going to ruin my whole birthday party." After the episode aired, her friends who were with her said they did a couple of takes because her first reaction was like, "Oh, that sucks. Thanks for letting me know." Story 2. My parents were dinner guests in an episode of Nanny 911, and they said literally everything was staged. I don't remember all of the details, but they said the directors had a code word that they would say to the kids when they were supposed to start acting all crazy. And then once the scene was done, the kids would be perfectly normal. Story 3. I was on a dog training TV show when I was 8-ish. The idea was that the dog trainer came in and helped our family integrate our new puppy into our household, to give us training tips and advice, etc. The whole thing was basically bogus. The trainer came to our house for maybe 30 minutes tops and gave us extremely basic advice. The producers also told us we had to get changed and pretend that he was visiting us 3 months later after he gave us the advice and how it had made our life better, yada yada yada. It's so dumb because our puppy was clearly the same age in the before and 3 months after shots, and my family aren't actors, so our reactions were really fake. One of the producers also made me say, "I love you, dog's name," while hugging him for about 6 takes. Story 4. I worked with 2 people who were on Teen Mom, grandmother and granddaughter. Obviously, the granddaughter was the teen mom. And they told me that the directors would intentionally set up stuff that would cause drama and then start filming. For example, the directors had them go out to lunch and told the grandmother something she didn't know yet and filmed their argument for drama, knowing she would get upset that the granddaughter hadn't told her before, even though she was planning to. Really dumb, unnecessary drama for TV. But apparently the baby got tons of scholarships and support from the show, which is why they did it in the first place. So they said it was worth it. Story 5. A classmate of mine was on My Country's Next Top Model. Before getting into the show, she was asked what kind of hair she would never want to get, so that the producers know about it and not make her have it during the makeover episode. My classmate had long blonde hair which she really loved, so she said she didn't want them to cut her hair off, and that she also hated strange, unnatural colors like blue, pink, etc. Fast forward to the makeover episode. The hairstyling team comes in and finds her hair unfitting for a model, so she needs to get a makeover, and guess what? Her makeover obviously consists of a pixie cut and green hair to make her look like a punk fairy. My classmate cried throughout the entire process, so I guess the producers got the drama they wanted out of this. Story 6. I was on Wife Swap when I was 10 years old. My family had to switch with a farming family, and we were supposed to be the city family, even though my family and I lived in the suburbs. There were plenty of quotes taken out of context, as you'd expect. They also incited plenty of drama. I was framed as addicted to video games, so they took my Xbox and Game Boy Color for the week. A few days later, one of the crew members came in with my Game Boy and said, "Look, I found this," and handed it to me. It shouldn't be surprising that they sent the woman staying in our house into my room to catch me in the act. To be honest, not much has really changed in my life except getting Snapchats of my 10-year-old face when my friends catch the reruns. I'm open to any questions if anyone is curious. Story 7. Yup, a close friend was on MTV's True Life about having crippling social anxiety disorder. The episode was about different fears people had. We were a big circle of friends since elementary. We always knew he was sort of socially awkward and battled with the way he looked. He was super insecure and self-conscious about his looks, and he admittedly got teased the most by the more alphas of the group, the most insecure. But we loved and embraced him and made sure he knew that and that he was equals with us. Anyway, they filmed us all for a couple weeks in high school hanging out. This was back in 2001, by the way. Going out, etc. He was crushing on a girl we knew. In fact, she was part of the larger social circle anyway, and so they convinced him to ask for her number. I guess this was going to be the storyline they needed. He already had it since we were all one big friend group, but they needed something for the story. That was like the big goal for his arc. So he asked one night while we were at the movie theater. She gave it to him. All's good. They went on one date but didn't amount to anything, but they remained friends just as they were before. Fast forward to airing, And I don't know if you remember, at the end of each episode, they have just text on a black screen with, like, the final update. The text for his final update read, "Despite finally building the courage to ask for her number, she gave him a fake number." He spiraled after that, and it fucked him up way more than he was before. He turned to drugs to cope, since he was basically humiliated on MTV with hundreds of millions of viewers. He unfortunately passed away from a drug overdose a few years later. Miss you, Goomba? Story? Not me, but I bumped into someone that was on the Property Brothers show. According to them, the two brothers were only ever on site for the filming. They threw out, hauled away all the person's furniture, and what it was replaced with was very pretty looking, but hard and uncomfortable. Bad quality, like had to be replaced within a year bad quality. Impractical for the family, and the family could not get anything from before the makeover back that they wanted. Story 9. Ooh, I finally have a response. My boyfriend and I filmed the pilot for a show. It's in production currently and is supposed to be picked up. The show features us and another couple going on cheap dates with a fixed budget. The couple with the best cheap date wins an expensive date package. There were a lot of weird moments. When engaging with the host, she kept messing up her lines and would sometimes say something several times before getting it right. And we had to react like she didn't spend 3 minutes stuttering. None of the conversations with her were natural, because she would pause to reword her lines a lot while we sat there with a frozen smile on. We were prompted what to say frequently, and did a lot of retakes. It took all day to film 2 hours. Everything had to be set up. Everything. We were mic'd at each location change. Business owners had to agree to us popping up. Sometimes we'd say something and the director would ask us to repeat it. The cameras are hard to ignore, especially when at any second the director would say, "Talk about this, but in full statements." It was fun though. I really liked talking to the sound guy about his experiences. He was telling some industry horror stories. Also, my boyfriend and I lost, so we went to a bar and laughed about it. Story 10. So, not technically a big, well-known reality show, but there used to be a home makeover show that had 5 different designers that would get their own episode on a rotational basis, and my mom was one of them. For one of her episodes, she actually did a makeover of our own house as she was selling it. She made my brother and I stay with her for the week of filming. Parents are divorced, which I thought was weird, but whatever. She roped my teen brother into making some art for the show, so he got his little bit of fame, and I just hid in my room the whole week. I remember I thought I had caught my mom alone, and we had a conversation where I expressed how uncomfortable I felt with people in our home, and why I have to stay that week at her house, as there was no arrangement ever on which house my brother and I stayed at. Anyways, some camera guy snuck up on us and filmed the whole thing without me knowing, and then asked me if I could repeat myself, but be more mad at my mom. I felt so violated. Also, the fact there were 4 mid-20-year-olds hanging out right outside my bedroom the whole week. I was 16. And that was just so fucking creepy now that I think about it years later. Story 11. So, I was on Wife Swap when I was 13 or so, and they made up more than half of it. You see, they make it so there's a nice family and a bad family. They made us the bad family of 10 living in a house bus. All the stuff they can't make look bad, they don't put on the show. They act nice and all, but make you look like a fool on TV. I remember my mom coming back home crying and stressed out. 1 whole year later, they decide to put it on TV. I could hardly watch the episode with us in it because of how cringy it was. I would say more, but my hand is frozen. Story 12. Worked on a show like this. Saw all the raw footage. It was hundreds of hours of footage turned into a 43-minute show. So, of course, by omission, you are not getting the full story. But I would say the first 85% of the show was more or less real. The kids would act up, the parents were overwhelmed, etc. When the parents sat down and the star explained what she was seeing, the emotions and feedback were real. What was not real in certain weeks was the wrap-up. In each episode, the problems were resolved, but that was not often the case. Also, the solution was always the same, and the problem was always the parent. It was eye-opening. I'm convinced now if a kid acts up, it's the parent's fault. The parent might be a nice person, sincerely mean well, but don't possess the skills and discipline it takes to be a good parent. The solution was always one: be consistent. That means individually and as parents. 2. Give the child structure. Let them know what they will be doing that day. Being a good parent is not about giving your child complete freedom to do whatever they want. It bores and frustrates them. 3. Give them little rewards for doing the right thing. Even if it's just a sticker or drawing a little happy face on the calendar or something, don't take their good behavior for granted. 4. Listen to them. Don't act like they don't know what real problems are, what real suffering is. If they are feeling sad and frustrated, acknowledge that it is real and let them talk. Don't interrupt them to offer a solution or to tell them they're being ridiculous. Most of the time, the kids just need to vent. So all that stuff was real. A lot of times, the parents thought they were victims, unlucky to simply have been given kids who weren't perfect robots, and you could tell the problems would reappear after the taping stopped. But on the show, it always ended with everybody in the family coming around. Happy ever after. Story 13, a friend of a friend's Mustang was in South Beach Tow. The business, Tremont Towing, I think, is a legitimate towing business. One of the directors came up to him and told him that his car was being towed for some infraction. It was the friend's fault entirely, so the towing business was in the right. But before the car would be towed, he was told that if he agreed to be in a scene, because his car looked expensive and unique, they'll have everything set up for his grand entrance, and if he acted all surprised, made a spat, and go crazy, they'll just give him back the car at the pound. He didn't agree to it because he didn't want his face shown on TV, and the director was cool with it. But he did allow the car to be in the scene. Had he refused everything, they would have just towed the car and moved on. Well, on the flip of a switch, two actors came out of nowhere, a couple, and they filmed the scene. It was as crazy, overblown, and terribly acted as you'd expect for a show like this. You had these two random people, actors freaking out about a Mustang being towed that wasn't really theirs. He thought the whole thing was hilarious. Thankfully, he was so chill with the entire thing and with the crew. Actors in general that even though he didn't agree to be in the scene, they just gave him his car back once everything was over. He calls it a win to this day. Story 14. Little off topic but similar. Jupiter Entertainment reenacts true stories for shows like For My Man, Vengeance, Fatal Attraction, Homicide Hunters, etc. Much of the acting is filmed with no sound because the voiceover will be explaining the story. They have filmed many shows at my house. I usually hide in a corner of the kitchen and watch them film. I swear it's more entertaining than the shows. One scene had two men arguing over a woman. They really got into it with sweat and spittle flying. Then the woman walks down my hallway and confronts them. It's a big, scary, screaming fight. Thing is, you don't know what they are really saying. Let me tell you, we were all nearly crying with laughter. It sounded something like this. What do you think you're doing with my woman? What do you mean your woman? I came here to eat some pizza. Well, I'll stuff this pizza up your bum and you'll like it. I hate pizza and you can't make me. Besides, that woman is pregnant with my baby and we're gonna name it Pizza. You can't do that because my name is Pizza, you stupid pretty boy. I know I'm pretty. Do you want to go for pizza when this is over? Woman walks up. What the hell is the matter with you guys? My poor pizza baby has its feelings hurt because you don't like it. That baby's father is Taco Bell and not me. You're gonna have a burrito, not a pizza. Wow, you are so mean. Can we have salad for dinner break? Oh, wait, how about a poke bowl? There's a great place just a couple minutes from here. I think that's a great idea because I hate pizza. And so on. Vicious on camera, hilarious in real life. Story 15. My ex's brother was on an old MTV show, Room Raiders. It's a show where a boy or girl gets to snoop around in 3 potential partners' rooms to see if they like each other based on their possessions in the room. Terrible concept. The young lady looking around the room had 0 personality and all the interesting or embarrassing things that were found were planted. I mean, come on, who the fuck has a tiny comb for their pubes as a teenager? Story 16. I was friends with a guy whose brother was on the show, 16 and pregnant. He and his girlfriend at the time were featured. They made him out to be a bad guy, but he wasn't anything like the way he was made out on TV. I had hung out with them years before and during filming. He had his stupid moments but is an overall good guy. She had talked about being on the show before they did the deed, red flag 1, and when the kids were born, she took them and ran away on a few occasions. Once claiming he could see the babies, and when he flew to see them, she never showed up to pick him up. He was left stranded in a different state. So when you watch those shows, it may not always be as it seems. It can be entertaining, but don't take what you see as fact. They start a lot of drama just for the audience at the cost of the individuals. Story 17, Extreme Makeover. Home Edition came to our neighborhood once. The family lived a few streets away, right next door to my older brother's best friend. His mother is also my mother's best friend, so we were there a lot. The woman getting the new house was a single mother to 5 adopted sons, most of whom were sick. This woman was always nasty. Her neighbors will tell you she was miserable to be around, petty about people parking in front of her house, yelling at us anytime a wiffle ball or frisbee ended up in her yard, shouting at neighbors about being too loud while having a party. Basically, every molehill became a mountain. She was a Karen ahead of her time. When she got picked for the show, the neighborhood was floored. The show made her out to be a saint among heathens, which we all expected. But knowing the real her, it was just so damn frustrating for all of us. I used to play football with one of her sons, and he would say that life was never that great after the new house because they were constantly under a spotlight now. Everyone suddenly wanted to come over. They had to keep a police car out front 24/7. They lost all privacy. They flew away to Disney for the week, and Ty Pennington and crew got to work and built them a gorgeous home. She immediately proceeded to try to sell it for profit, and when that failed, never paid her property taxes and was ultimately evicted because the town kept putting a lien on her house. Story 18. My family and our home were on that show, This Old House, in the late 90s. Norm Abrams was the host, and they picked our house because of my dad's collection of shaker furniture. The idea was that we gave him a tour of the house while being filmed, and then he demonstrated to the camera how to make furniture like ours. Everything was 100% genuine. Norm and the crew were kind and super respectful to all of us. No second takes. When he explained to the camera how to build replicas of the shaker furniture, it became apparent that he was a master woodworker. Before he left, we all took photos together and he signed some stuff. It was a really special day. That was right when reality TV was starting to pick up steam. MTV's The Real World was big at the time. I don't think Survivor has come out yet. That was the show that opened the floodgates. Story 19. My dad was an editor and taught editing before he died. One of the biggest things he stressed to us about things like this is that when they are shooting with one camera, you can tell because there's only one camera angle, and you see a cut, that means there was a passage of time we didn't see. Also, the editor's job is to create moments that get an emotional response from you. That's what art is. So if you are watching and two people are arguing and one says something, and then there's a cut to the other's face being speechless or something, that's meaningful to you. You're like, wow, burn. But in reality, the person could have had a great comeback or continued the argument, and the editor used a reaction from 10 minutes ago when the sound guy was giving him instructions. A series of events can be A, B, C, D, but an editor can think A, D, C, B tells a more compelling story and do that instead. Reality TV, real people not actors commercials, movies like Borat, all use a ton of edits in a short period of time. These are entertainment or advertising, so deception is expected or inconsequential. In my opinion, it's fine to use this technique, but we as viewers should know that every time there's an edit, something was cut out. Usually for flow, but deception is possible. Story 20. I was on set for an episode of Married at First Sight recently. They were filming a scene at my workplace. There were a few guests that had appeared in reality shows before who claimed that the reality shows they had been on were heavily scripted, but this one didn't seem to be. Some people were asking the producers about what would happen during filming, and the producers kept saying they didn't know, and that they just kind of start the cameras and see what happens. The couple seemed to get along really well. It didn't look like there was much drama. The crew was pretty picky about how the room was set up and what was in the background of the shot, but other than that, they weren't too controlling. If anything, my biggest complaint with the crew was punctuality. They told some guests to get there earlier than they were scheduled to get there themselves, and then they showed up 40 minutes later than scheduled anyway. I heard that this is pretty normal for TV crews, though.